Welcome, one and all, to the ancient journey. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us. Today's journey, the Dyatlov Pass Incident. In 1959, a group of 10 hikers formed a group to trek across the Ural Mountains of Sverdlovsk, located near the center of what used to be the Soviet Union. The group was made up of university students who had already had many hours of experience hiking under their belts. The group had all achieved Grade 2 hiker status with ski tour experience, and the trip into the Urals would complete the hours required for them to graduate to Level 3. At the time, this was the highest level achieved in the Soviet Union, and the Level 3 hikers would have traveled over 300 kilometers by that time. The route the group had chosen was approved by the Sverdlovsk City Route Commission. The trip was to take the group into the far northern regions of the area and take them through to the feeder streams of the Lozva River. The group had a goal to finish their journey at the Ural Mountain and then return home. The group was given a map to follow, and the City Route Commission approved up to 11 persons to take the trip. The group of 10 departed the same day that they received their map, January 23, 1959. Members of the group included 21-year-old Yuri Yudin, who ended up turning back due to health issues, 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, 21-year-old Yuri Durashenko, 20-year-old Ludmila Dubinina, 23-year-old Georgy Krivonoshenko, 24-year-old Alexander Kolevatov, 22-year-old Zenaida Komorogova, 23-year-old Rustam Slobodin, 23-year-old Nikolai Thibaut Brignoles, 38-year-old Semen Zolotaryov. From the diaries and the cameras of the hikers, it is possible to trace the hikers' initial route. On January 31st, the group was able to stage up at the edge of a wooden area to begin preparations for the rest of their journey. From there, they stored food and supplies in an area they would find on their way back home. Snowstorms in the area had caused them to deviate from their path, drifting west towards the top of Kolat Mountain, which translated from the local tribal dialect means Dead Mountain. At some point, the hikers appear to recognize they are off course and stop to set up camp to regroup. Rather than move down the mountain to flatter terrain, the group cut into the snowbanks of the mountain and set up camp there. Safety from the weather was barely a mile downhill from them, yet they chose to stay put and pitch their tent right on the mountain. In order to let people know that they had made it back, Dyatlov had informed their hiking club that he would stop to send a telegram from the very first town he reached on his return. He should have returned around Valentine's Day, but days passed and the group had not been heard from. By February 20th, the hikers' families began to ask for a search to determine where the group was. The first persons to search were volunteers, but later consisted of the military, who brought airplanes and helicopters to assist. Less than a week later, on February 26th, the campsite was found. The tent was empty and extremely damaged. The tent was described as half torn down and covered in snow. The tent had been cut from the inside as if someone was desperately trying to escape it. The hikers' belongings and some of their clothing was left behind. 9 sets of footprints wandered away from the site, some indicating the hikers were barefoot or had only one boot on. Less than a mile away, rescuers discovered the first 2 victims, Krivonoshenko and Doroshenko, both of whom were only dressed in their underwear. Branches of the tree that they were found under were broken several feet into the air, making it appear as though someone was trying to climb the tree. Between the tree and the tent, searchers discovered more victims spread out in 3 places: Dyatlov, Komorogova, and Slobodin. Those 3 all appeared to be trying to return to their tent. The rescuers found no other victims for 2 more months. On May 4th, the last of the group was found under over 10 feet of snow, just a few hundred feet past the tree with the broken branches. Of the remaining 4, 3 of them were dressed in the clothing that the others were missing. Upon recovery of the bodies, a medical examination was started on the first bodies found. All of them had died of hypothermia. Slobodin had a small skull fracture, but medical experts had surmised it would not have been a fatal wound. However, the discovery of the next bodies changed things quite drastically. 3 of the victims had injuries that were fatal. The injuries included fatal skull damage, major fractures to the ribs and sternum, missing eyes, missing tongues, missing parts of lips, and even missing eyebrows. The damage was so severe it would have required something close to a car crash to cause it. Not having these injuries would have been a reason to cause death on its own. However, the remaining person died of hypothermia. This presented a puzzling scene. Why had this group cut their way out of the tent and rushed out into a blinding snowstorm in such a hurry that they left clothing behind? It had been close to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, so what was so terrifying that the group cut their way out and burst out into the wilderness on foot? Why was the group so spread out? What had caused such severe damage to some of them, while others appeared to die of hypothermia? With no witnesses left alive from the incident, many theories were put forth. There was an initial thought that the group had been attacked by the local indigenous people, the Mansi. The Mansi were a tribe of reindeer herders, and many thought that the group had feared the hikers were encroaching on their land, and a skirmish had ensued. There was some thought that the hikers had encountered a wild animal, such as the Eurasian bear, who attacked the group, injuring some and scaring the others off. Were the tree branches broken on that tree from someone trying to climb and escape a bear? Strangely, radiation had been found on the clothing of some of the victims. Had they been poisoned in some way? Or had they encountered something stranger that would leave traces of radiation behind, such as an alien encounter? Had something caused them to become disoriented or insane, making them think venturing out was their best option? Perhaps the group had gotten in a fight amongst themselves. The group did contain men and women. Was a lover's quarrel to blame? Witnesses reported seeing strange orange flying orbs of light in the area. Were those orbs the cause of the radiation and also a cause of the death of the hikers? Could it have been the famed Yeti or abominable snowman who tore through their tent and savaged the group, causing some to flee for their lives, only to freeze to death? Investigators have offered opinions of many of these theories. The Mansi theory was ruled out due to there being no other footprints left behind besides the hikers. This would have also ruled out the wild animal attack and the Yeti attack. Friends of the group had stated that there was no romantic interest between any members of the group, which ruled out any form of domestic dispute. High winds can cause a sonic anomaly that disorients and sickens its victims. These sounds can cause restlessness and a feeling of impending doom or dread. Is it possible the group was affected by this and only regained their senses when they cut their way out from the tent and moved far away from it? Radioactive traces had been found on some of the group. Had the group been transporting some form of radioactive material and become sickened by it? At the time, the Soviet Union was engaged in many scientific experiments that involved raising weather balloons that contained radioactive isotopes. Had the group spilled this substance in their tent, which caused them to flee to their own demise? At the time, Russian authorities only considered 3 options. An avalanche had claimed the victims, a slab avalanche had crushed the victims, or a storm had been so severe that it destroyed the hikers' tent and forced them out into the elements. However, there were many inconsistencies with the avalanche theory. The first bodies found were not under a deep layer of snow. Over the years, many other expeditions traveled through the area with no report of any avalanche. The area where the tent was located was not very steep and would have required a very specific set of conditions to cause an avalanche. The hikers were also very experienced and very unlikely to make camp in an area they knew to be avalanche prone. Also, the footprints leading from the tent were almost orderly, showing the group walking at a normal pace and not fleeing their lives from an avalanche. However, in 2015, researchers pointed towards the thought that the group had made camp by digging deep into the snow base. This caused a weak spot in the snowpack, leaving a large, solid block of snow above the tent, waiting to move downhill. The snowstorm arrived that night, adding weight to the snowpack. At some point in the night, the snowfield above them breaks loose and tons of snow slowly begin to crush the tent and blocks the tent entrance. The group cuts their way out as the tent is crushed in slow motion and descend downhill to the tree line to seek shelter. Some of the group who are not clothed stop to build themselves a fire to avoid certain death. They are certainly overmatched by the elements and die of hypothermia in a short time. Some of the group, who are somewhat clothed, attempt to return to the tent to try to get supplies out of it. That group appears to have succumbed to the cold and died between the tent and the tree line. The remaining hikers, who were clothed, were trying to retreat downhill, only to fall into a crevasse, a deep hole in the snow caused by a stream flowing underneath it. It would have been invisible to them, as it would have been covered by a fresh blanket of snow. Their fall, and the conditions in the crevasse, would have caused their severe crush-related injuries, and their other injuries, such as missing eyes and lips, would be a result of constant melting and freezing of water in the crevasse. The 2015 researchers do create a nice, neat version of the events, but with no witnesses surviving, we may truly never know what happened that night. Thanks for watching, and thanks for sharing the journey.